Markets are taking a breather today as Bitcoin gets a little action and looks like it wants to try to break out of this range it's been in. But let's take a look at what's going on in the news. The Dow is up 0.62, S&P up 0.83, NASDAQ up 1.2 with about 2 hours left to go in trading. So as I always say, it's the momentum into the close that you want to watch. And this is a little update that we have today ahead of the end of the week, getting into next week where we have the inflation print coming out, then the Fed's response to it. And I think that the markets are expecting a softer inflation print than the last one. They're expecting decelerating, declining inflation, still high, but coming down a little bit. And if that's the case, and the Fed does 50 basis points, the markets might have a nice little rally, and then possibly start looking towards that Santa Claus rally through the end of the year before we get into recession. How shallow, how short, how deep, how long, or will it be deep and short, shallow and short? There's all kinds of contemplations with that. Deep, long, shallow, short, shallow, long, deep, short, shallow, long, all kinds of different things you can play with that whole recession debate. And we're going to get into that as we start going. But right now, stagflation could be a possibility where you have high inflation and slowing growth. So we could be dealing with high inflation or higher inflation than the Fed's target of 2% for quite a while. Could be maybe they get it down to 5 or 4 or something like that. And you have to slow growth in order to bring that down. And really the biggest impact on the inflation print right now and probably last month, because we're going to get October or November inflation information, is gas prices. Gas prices have come down a little bit. Labor is still strong. Prices on goods and services is still high. So it'll be interesting to see what that shows and how. But the expectation is that it'll come in a little bit softer, and the Fed can only do 50 instead of 75. And we can all, look forward to a nice little Santa Claus rally before we get into next year, when a lot of people are calling for recession and the markets to kind of unwind ahead of that. So in other news, it's all about FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, more info coming out every day, and then CZ of Binance with his attestations and reports that are being done, which are not audits, and the speculation of does he have the reserves? Are his assets higher than his liabilities and things like that? And they provided some information, but not all information. And did they actually prove these accounts and things like that? And so it's really interesting what's going on there. But the one thing that's going to happen is a forensic accounting firm has been hired to start digging into the FTX thing, which is what's needed to start tracking the money. It's the same firm that audited the Bernie Madoff accounting. Even though Bernie Madoff never actually did any trades, the money still came in and went out. So you can track those things. Same thing with crypto. FTX, at some point, currency had to come in from somewhere to somewhere and go out from somewhere to somewhere. Even if tokens were created out of thin air, which they had to go somewhere in exchange for something. So that stuff is certainly trackable and traceable, as we've seen the authorities track and trace a lot of these ransomware transactions that have happened and been paid out in Bitcoin that we saw last year and during the pandemic when that thing was happening. A lot of those hackers were tracked and traced, and those transactions were tracked and traced. That's one great thing about crypto and the blockchain, is you can track that stuff down. So I think this is a can of worms that once they start digging in and they start doing the forensic accounting with FTX, they're going to start to see the connections with Tether and Binance and that bank in the Bahamas that's at the root of all of it. That was kind of Alameda's bank and the bank that they purchased in, I guess, where was it? Jefferson County or something like that. That really small bank in the middle of nowhere that they purchased. And then that bank was owned by another bank in the Bahamas. Sam Bankman-Fried's in the Bahamas. CZ of Binance doesn't have an office anywhere, doesn't have anybody that it really answers to, but they've been banned in a lot of countries and have had issues abroad. But CZ is now stepping out as the man of the hour and has even done a masterclass on crypto and coming in as the industry savior. But once you start pulling back the layers and looking behind the curtain, I guarantee you that you're going to find all kinds of illegal activity between Binance and Tether, and same kind of stuff going on at FTX. They're using assets that they've created and calling it equal to their Bitcoin reserves, and they're all interchangeable in that letter that was provided about their attestation of their assets. Binance, I'm talking about. They cited 3 tokens. Of course, they said they had Bitcoin, then they had this BBTC, BTBB, BCBB, whatever it was, that they say are all interchangeable, and they're accounting for them equally. And obviously, as we know, as the price of assets go up and down, that doesn't work. So be interesting to see what happens. And again, we're just in the era of do not trust, verify, but do not trust. Even when you get some sort of verification, you still got to be on guard, and you still have to be careful. And even regulated exchanges like Coinbase that are in the United States, public company, audited, they can still get away with stuff and do things, because at the end of the day, what the accountants are auditing is the information you give them as a corporation. So you can give them whatever you want and make it look however you want to make it look, unless they're actually auditing bank accounts and following the flow of money, and you're providing that information. All they know is whatever it is you printed out and told them. So a lot of stuff to be aware of, but that's one interesting thing there. Celsius bankruptcy judge orders return of 50 million in assets to users. So we'll see how that shakes out. So other than that, Sam Bankman-Fried is now under investigation by the U.S. attorneys, Department of Justice, the FTC, SEC. Everybody's looking into this whole situation here. And as I said, the dominoes will start to fall once they start digging in and start uncovering what was going on, who was tied to who, what money went where, and those types of things. So let's take a look at the charts. Bitcoin right now moving back towards the upper end of the range, 17.2 right now, coming off a low of 16,680 in that range. And again, probably could get back up here to that 17.5 range and potentially even up to 18,000. So we'll see if it can keep climbing, but it's been in this range, hasn't been able to break out of that 17.3, 17.4 range here lately. So not much action on the daily. If you look at it on the hourly, nice little pop there on the 4 hour, still ranging. And then of course on the daily, still ranging. So until we get some sort of a market reversal and we get risk on environment, that's one thing that Bitcoin has not participated in, was these big market rallies that we've seen in traditional markets. So right now, a little bit of action, testing the upper end of these ranges again. Could be just some liquidations going on. And then, of course, we still have this lower range holding at 15.4. So I think we'll see some action here as we get into next week with the inflation and the Fed's response to it. Here's the Dow getting a little bit of a bounce here today, still, off this little bounce here the last couple of days. Kind of did the same thing last time in this range. After a few down days, had a little bounce and then down, bounce down. NASDAQ, same thing, took a little breather in the same spot last time, coming off of that bear market rally that we had back in August, and S&P doing the same thing. VIX continuing its rise with a little breather. The Dixie is rechecking this low again. So the dollar is continuing to decline, which adds to the inflation picture. And then, of course, the 10-year is got a nice little bounce today, but still continuing its march down. So if the dollar's low, the 10-year's low, and stocks are dropping, that's not a good sign for the markets or the economy and what is going on. Let's take a look at Ethereum. Ethereum's kind of doing the same thing as Bitcoin, and most of the other major altcoins all kind of following suit, just ranging. Nothing spectacular happening, here or there. And the real question is, as we get into the end of this week, the markets are really awaiting, could this be a double top here and reverse it? Markets are awaiting the whole Fed decision and what's going on there. And then, of course, whether or not Sam Bankman-Fried is going to testify in Congress next week. They're trying to get him there to, kind of clear the air. And it's really interesting watching and listening to what's going on. On one hand, he says he doesn't have the information, doesn't know what's going on. On the other hand, he's challenging the individuals that have taken over the company that said that there's no documentation of assets or transactions or things that were going on. And Sam says that he's looking at those transactions, and those documents do exist, but at the other On the other hand, he says he doesn't know anything, doesn't have the detail, doesn't have the information. So it'll be interesting to see where the chips fall, what was really going on, and who all is involved. And as the layers get peeled back, you have companies like Tether, you have companies like Binance that will not provide truly audited, verified financial statements, accounts, things like that. And the reason they're not doing that is because they have something to hide. So if you have nothing to hide, you put all your cards on the table. Full disclosure, bad news first, put all your cards on the table. The only time you don't do that is when you have something to hide and when you're trying to clean things up ahead of things getting exposed. But at some point, that stuff's going to get exposed. And I think the FTX was the tip of the iceberg in terms of contagion yet to come when some of these other spaces get exposed. The real question is, do investors in general, because we're talking about a global community and investors in other countries, do they really care what's going on at Tether? Do they really care what's going on at Binance as long as they're making money and the exchanges are working and they're able to trade and redeem and take their funds on and off the exchange? So that's the real question. In the United States, there's only so much the United States can do when these entities exist off the shores. So we'll see what happens. These are the things I'm looking at, and I'll see you in the next video.